Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. After the United States Congress officially certified Donald Trump for his victory in November elections, the president-elect came up with some very bold statements during his wide-ranging presser at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida, especially when we talk about the foreign policy front is concerned. Regarding Canada, President-elect Donald Trump said, let me quote, "You get rid of the artificially drawn line and you take a look at what it looks like and it would also be much better for the national security," unquote. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau responded, let me quote him as well, "There isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the US," unquote. Regarding Greenland, the president-elect said, let me quote, "We need Greenland for national security purposes," unquote. We've also seen prime ministers of both Greenland and Denmark have ruled out the prospect of the transfer of the control of Greenland under the United States of America. Regarding the Panama Canal, the president-elect said it's vital to our country. Again, the government of Panama has maintained that the canal will remain Panamanian. Also regarding Gaza, the president-elect said, let me quote, if they are not, he was referring to the captives being held in Gaza. Let me quote him, "If they are not back by the time I get into the office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. It will not be good for Hamas and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone," unquote. Regarding Syria, he has changed a little bit of his position. During his first term, we know for a fact that he tried to pull the US troops out of Syria. And after that November election victory, he had also said that US had nothing to do with the situation in Syria. Now he says that he won't tell as to what the US policy is going to be because that's the part of the military strategy. Regarding NATO, he has urged the NATO allies to increase their defense spending to 5% of their GDP. All these important points of his wide-ranging presser on the foreign policy front are up for discussion in today's show. For that, we are honored to be joined in the studio by Dr. BAQIR Malik, a foreign affairs expert. Dr. Malik, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to be joined by Mr. Air Vice Marshal Retired IJAZ Malik, senior analyst. Air Marshal Malik, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. On Skype at the same time, we are honored to be joined by Mr. Shahid KIANI, former ambassador. Mr. KIANI, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. If both of you gentlemen present in the studio allow me to begin with Mr. Shahid KIANI. Mr. KIANI, by looking at this particular wide-ranging presser, specifically talking about his stance regarding Canada, Greenland, Panama, what's your understanding? What sort of a posturing this one is by the president-elect, Donald Trump?
Well, I can just tell you, I have served in Canada for nearly 3.5 years as a deputy high commissioner and sometimes also as acting high commissioner. But those were different times, but I can tell you those were when Jean Chrétien was the prime minister right after 9/11. Things were very different, and I tell you, at that time, many issues the Canadian government didn't agree with the United States. Now things are quite different in Trudeau's, time, in which I doubt very much there has been any difference of opinion between Canada and the US on any issue. Rather, on the Middle East, we have seen how Canadians and the United States government had supported these rallies in spite of the gruesome, human rights violations going on in the Gaza. I tell you, it is very, very difficult at this time to foresee as to what President Trump would say. I don't see any differences of opinion between Canada and the US. And how on earth would US would like to have Canada being the second largest country in the world physically to become part of Canada? They have the longest border in the world. They are extremely good, trade partners. They are the members of NORAD. NORAD is the North American, agency between Canada and US, which looks after the skies over United States, Canada, to see if there is any intrusion of any aircraft. They are members of NATO. They have so many commonalities. I I do not see President Trump, when he sits down on the 20th, to have a priority as to get Canada as becoming part of the 51st state, he already knows that this is unworkable. I tell you, this is not workable, and he knows it. This is just rhetoric, which appeals to hardly appeals to anybody. If you look at the U.S. newspapers and media, they are criticizing
So if it hardly appeals to anybody, and
that
even the US
neighbor which
media is.
has you have peaceful borders with this country, but
So it is not doable and it is merely
U.S.
rhetoric
media,
as per your understanding. So,
it's not
Mr.
doable.
Kiani, why would the president elect talk about it at the very first place?
You see, what happens is that a populist president like President Trump would, I doubt very much if there is any appeal to, but you see, rhetoric works. To create some sort of a controversy right at the outset. Talking about Canada, US, because what happens is they the Canadian uh, Canadian and the US have the trade deficit between the two. So trying to force Canada to you'll put tariffs on that. If you remember, a few weeks back, Prime Minister Trudeau was in the United States. He met President Trump at his house in Florida. Nothing worked out, but this will remain rhetoric. What is problem? Some would be, I tell you, neither Greenland. The Danish Prime Minister already said this is not going to work. Neither Panama Canal, because Panama, they might force the Panamanian government to reduce the tariffs on the trade on the use of the Panama Canal. The problem would be, I tell you very frankly, or rather maybe they're able to do is what's happening in Gaza. That is where the hostages of the Israeli. Their priority on the first day would be this. Priority would be what happens, and there is a possibility that the Gazan the Hamas people might release those people who have whatever they are left, and then the war in Ukraine. And naturally speaking, the most top priority would be how to deal with China as economic rising power and the tariffs which have to be imposed. Because once I remember, I tell you very frankly, you impose tariffs on Chinese goods which enter the United States, the people of the United States will have to pay for it because then the things will be more expensive for them in the markets. So these are all rhetorics. When he sits down in the White House, in the Oval Room, on the 20th or the 21st, then he will come to know that things are not so easy to say. You can speak publicly about it, but once it comes down, as they say, the buck stops at your table. The decision you have to take into account many things.
Right, Mr. Kiani, please stay with us. I'll come back to you. Let me bring in other panelists into the discussion also. Dr. Malik, what's your understanding regarding this particular presser just 13 days before he takes over the White House?
I personally believe that it's just only a political statement, because you have seen that where he was addressing basically the young conservative voters. So Trump is basically facing three main challenges in his foreign policy. First one is the rise of China. Second one is the inequality of globalization, and third one is the basically power instability that is facing. These three fronts are a main challenge of the Trump foreign policy. So basically it is kind of something like a political pressurizing. What he wants to gain is basically his personality characteristic is that his personality is basically aggressive to attack on the weaker opponents to gain the political objective, strategic objective, or you can say the diplomatic objective. So on one side he is basically saying that okay, because his all voter strategy or electoral campaign was the American first. So even in a General Assembly in 2020 he was saying that if Mexico or other country put their country first, why not I? So this is same tactics that he is basically using. It's not like that he will use a force and say that Canada will become the 51st state of the United States. It's not like that. It's only just like that. Why we are spending $200 billion annually? So why you are not basically securing your border? Why we are paying you like this? So one thing is that because his policy is protectionist, or you can say more focus on the first America like this. Similarly, on Panama, he was just only is not like that. He is saying that this Panama Canal was constructed by the United States. Why you are allowing the trade to the Chinese? Even Chinese share is just only I think 21%, and American share is at 74%. But what he was saying that if you are giving a trade route to the China and there is a 21%, still this 21% share is challenging the American economy.
How impactful and useful do you think, or effective, this particular aggressive approach is? I mean, doesn't that invoke a strong reaction from the concerned nations also, as we have seen the statements coming from this, those leaders, the countries which have been mentioned by President-elect?
Because his personality is a totally unpredictable. Even in America, they are criticizing like this. And even you have seen the reaction from the Canada, reaction from the Panama president, or even from this Denmark like this. So these things is just like they are giving a clear indication that if Trump increase the tariff, what will be the reaction, what will be the impact of the foreign policy between these countries with the Trump like this. So I think maybe there is a something like a give and take game like this. But I don't believe that there may be a something like a long impact of their foreign policy, or we see that there is a tension which remains between these countries. There may be some settlement between these countries, so and ultimately you will see that America will gain something from this.
So as per your understanding, that this particular is it possible, is it doable, is it workable of making Canada the 51st state of the United States of America, practically speaking?
No, practically it's not possible for that. America is the second largest physical country. How is it possible that America will basically make
when he talks about that this particular border is an artificially drawn line, what does he mean?
It is just look, for example, as America is paying for a security of $200 billion, it means that Canada should pay something for America. So it's not that we only spend to secure Canada. We need to get something like this.
Okay.
So that's one purpose. That's basically to get an economic benefit, or you can say that second, maybe the reason is that Trump want to containment policy of the China from this Canada. They will not have some this technological agreement or like this, because at this moment, what America is facing the rise of China, and their competition on a technological front is basically you can say this is a new technological arms race between US and China. So on one side, just Trump policy is that how to contain this China, how to basically counter the China expansionists, or this policy, or how we can make our alliances like this.
Right.
So this aggressive policy is not like that he want to control over our control of the Canada. Maybe if we are paying, we need to get something like this. So I think this is his policy that want to pressurize the Canadian government, but practically, realistically speaking, it is not possible that Canada will become the 51st state of the United States.
Right. Marshal Malik, what's your understanding? What is that particular point that has irked President-elect Donald Trump about Canada the most?
Obviously, it would not have any physical impact on what currently exists between the two neighboring countries. And they have a history of very peaceful neighbors, and particularly in the past 2 decades, there has never been any point of friction between two countries. So this is, I think, a typical, display of a combination of the cowboy, mentality, and display of brinkmanship in today's information era. So they just, if we go through all 3 points that you have highlighted, just to show the world or to the targeted audience that, policy, as a policy matter, the possibility exists, the possibility of, taking any of these steps. But if something is possible, what is the probability? That matters in practical terms, in tangible terms. Even if there is a possibility, there is no probability, zero probability, I would say. And same is true in case of Greenland, or for that matter, even Panama Canal. But
don't you think the case of Greenland is way different from that of Canada? I'll come to the case of Greenland later in the discussion.
Canada is,
what about, there has been threat to Canada as well as Mexico also, the president-elect, of increasing the tariffs to 25%. He has also at the same time ruled out use of any military force against Canada, rather, but hasn't ruled out the use of economic force. So the imposition of tariffs, is that going to be the economic force that could be possibly used?
Yes,
And
that angle is possible because what challenges he has other than his foreign policy, domestic challenges? Of course, these are about economics. The common man, plight in United States, unemployment, and certain other areas where the trade war with China, for example. So this could be a countermeasure to wherever possible draw some leverage for the benefit of American economic interest, nothing more than that.
Right. Mr. KIANI, do you think the case of Greenland and Canada are two different cases? When specifically talking about Greenland, why would President-elect talk about this? We know for a fact this particular territory is rich in rare earth minerals, as well as it is the shortest route from Europe to North America. So there must be something, and he has said that the ownership and the control of Greenland is an absolute necessity.
Well, I can assure you, as our other colleagues have been saying, the political rhetoric, but Greenland is sort of a semi-autonomous government of Greenland, which is for the last 600 years owned by Denmark. It is rich in minerals, naturally speaking, huge territory. And the Danish have been running this island for it is the largest island in the world, running it for the last many years. I don't think there is any rhetoric is okay. There is always, as I say, the fear of Chinese trying to use it or as a trade or something, or trying to exploit the mineral resources of Greenland. Other than that, it will be, in my opinion, political statement, yes, but Denmark is a member of NATO, and the United States would need the NATO members on its side when trying to, confront China in many reasons, for many issues. So this will remain a statement. This will remain just a rhetoric. I doubt very much that and I can tell you one thing more. I doubt very much that the United States people would support such a radical move of trying to occupy, because one thing very important, United States is a superpower. Who's going to threaten? Is Greenland or Danish trying to threaten the United States? No, they're on their side. So this remains a statement. It remains just a political statement.
Let's bring in Mr. KIANI. Professor MEIROWITZ is with us also, joining us from all the way from the United States of America. Professor Mark MEIROWITZ happens to be the professor at State University of New York, Maritime Affairs College. He is also senior political analyst. Let's ask him whether the Americans would support these ideas, especially when you talk about Canada and Greenland. Professor MEIROWITZ, go ahead, please.
Well, I've heard all your arguments, and I'd like to present an American point of view on these points, because I don't think perhaps you're seeing the inner Trump and what's really going on here. So first of all, let me start with Panama. First of all, the United States built a canal, my distinguished colleagues pointed out. But importantly, China controls both ends of the canal, and numerous Chinese corporations are in Panama. I'm sure the ambassador agree with me that that is a mortal danger in the event that there is a conflict with China. China could shut the canal. The United States cannot allow that. We cannot allow China in the Northern Hemisphere under the Monroe Doctrine and the Roosevelt Corollary. That is unacceptable, and it is not possible that that's going to continue. That is a blunder by President Carter, who actually today is having right now his funeral service. Great president, but a blunder of gigantic proportions to give it back. On Greenland, Now, my friends,
Even
Greenland
if they're
is
talking about President-elect's perspective, even if that is a threat that is under consideration, does it call for, making the canal your own or capturing
yes,
it by
but you
force?
see, I understand.
Is there a justification for that?
I understand. Allow me to address the points as I listen to all the points. So let me address all 3 points, and then I'm happy to hear your questions. As far as threats, these are not threats. These are points that are being brought across and made salient for diplomacy so that the world will focus on them. And unfortunately, Biden and Obama haven't been doing that. And Trump is focusing your attention. And we're having a discussion today about it. Can you imagine? We're having a discussion on it today. Now, about Greenland. Greenland was actually, the United States tried to acquire it a number of times. Denmark's actual claim on it is tenuous. The people in Greenland, the Inuit people, don't like the Danes. And bottom line issue is Greenland is strategically significant. Why? And for shipping. As the Arctic melts, the shipping routes will be available, and China and Russia will need those routes for strategic and shipping purposes. Again, a mortal danger to the world security. Lastly, Canada, I don't want to miss that. Canada is the greatest friend of the United States. We love the Canadians. My first trip on a plane was on a Canadian plane at Canada. We love the Canadians. But the point of the matter is that the United States is spending, as you pointed out, your colleagues, $200 billion on security, for their security. And Trump is simply highlighting this point. And by the way, amazing, he brought up all these points, and Trudeau's government fell. Trudeau is an incompetent leader, and it's better for Canada that he is no longer going to be prime minister. He ruined the country, and Trump is right to point that out. The migration problem from Canada, you mentioned Mexico. The minute he brought this stuff up about the tariffs, the Canadians, Trudeau went flying to Mar-a-Lago. President Sheinbaum in Mexico promised action.
I get your point. Professor MEIROWITZ, I would be short of time. The number of other points, I'll give you the chance to go a little further in detail regarding these points, but I'll have to take the reaction, the response from the other panelists regarding the points that you've also made. Now, regarding the first point, the Panama Canal, as I've already made, does it justify giving out such a statement, even if that is by the perspective of the US President-elect Donald Trump, if that is the threat? So is it justified to give such a statement about this particular Panama Canal? Also, you already mentioned that the people in Greenland, if I got it correctly, don't like the Danish, but they have got the right to declare their independence as well through a referendum. So that is their internal matter. Why would the US hint at making it an absolute necessity for its national security purposes? And what about Canada? I mean, when the president-elect says that it is an artificial line that has been drawn between the two, what does he mean? And he has also hinted at using the economic force. So those are the points that quickly came up in my mind. I'll take a very quick response from Dr. Malik regarding these 3 points, the kind of perception of threats the president-elect or the new incoming administration has got, as per Professor MEIROWITZ, your response regarding that.
Trump is basically trying to, it's just like that, if I'm investing something, if America is investing, America wants to get something. It's simply like this. Even it's strategically, for example, if saying that, okay, we are providing $200 billion America, then we need to get something more. For example, in a canal, Panama Canal, what he was saying that it was totally constructed by the United States, and then we will hand over you on 1999. So the term was that, okay, you through Panama Canal, America will use as a trade route and like this. Then you have provided this access to the China and also the Japan. So where is the treaty like this? So it's not like that. If you are providing the trade route to China, it means, and secondly, what we raised the point that you have increased the tariff to the American ships like this. But on the other side, they completely deny that no, we have not increased any tariff. But it's our policy of discrimination. The shape is from the US, Japan or China, we have an equal policy like this according to international, but the Panamanian government basically responded like this. So at this moment what Trump is trying is basically that because it constructed by the United States and it's a right of the United States, basically provide a route to other or not like this, one thing like. On the other side like Greenland, basically I think what he was trying is that what he was demanding to the NATO member state that you need to expand, increase the budget. It's not the responsibility of the America to pay or basically this kind of budget to the NATO like this. So I think this is one of the tactics is that there is no security threat like this, but on a Greenland main interest is strategic interest, because during the Cold War even United States have some station like this. Strategically Greenland is a very important.
They're hosting a military base over there as well.
Exactly.
At the moment.
There
is.
And it's strategically it's a very important position, and to pressurize like that even it also giving a message to the NATO member that you need to expand your budget, because even Denmark is the part of the NATO like this. So I think what he was trying to catch the situation with it's his statement is to make a happy to his conservative voters. Even we as a foreigner or other foreigner maybe they don't like this kind of statement. But actually
to make the NATO allies to pay more.
Exactly.
And he's asked them to pay 5% of the GDP. That is quite a considerable jump from 2% that is currently there.
Exactly.
That requirement. So do you think the NATO allies are going to do that up to 5%?
Because I don't think so. NATO will increase their budget like this, because at that moment NATO control is completely under the United States like this. Even after the Cold War, that was the question that why NATO is still existing is like this. When Warsaw Pact was finished or like disintegration of the Soviet Union, still why NATO is working like this. So because in many of the European countries they believe that NATO is basically existing to protect the American interest, not the European. It's to provide the security is a minor part of like this, but majority America is basically using this NATO forum to protect its national interest. So to increase the budget is not possible like this. Okay, we increase the budget or we will protect like this, but on the other side Trump clear point is why NATO is exist basically, why we are providing this fund like this. If you are a part of the member, you increase the budget like this. So we equally distribute like this. So maybe this is a Greenland.
Is it only concerned with that particular pressure on NATO to increase their defense spending up to 5% of their GDP, or are there more of the interests the United States sees in acquisition of Greenland? Marshal Malik, the case of Greenland is very interesting. It is not the first time any of the American leaders has hinted at acquiring Greenland. There were twice attempts made, firstly 1867 and then in 1946 as well. In 1946, President Harry S. Truman proposed buying it for $100 million. So it shows if there were attempts made earlier for acquisition of Greenland and making it the United States of America's. So we should be looking at this particular statement by President-elect very seriously. What's your understanding as far as the strategic significance of this particular territory is concerned?
There is a strategic significance, as you mentioned, that there has been and reportedly still some kind of surveillance arrangement there, which provides an early warning to American, air defense against the ICBM threat. My take on this issue would be that yes, there is a historically there is a strategic importance with the melting and the rising temperature in that region. The sea line of communication could become active, and this would be a very much contested sea line of communication, very like Indian Ocean region, for example. So this statement should be read or conceived in the sequence that these are the futuristic threats, the projection of enemies' capabilities and intentions in this region, and then building your threat perception based on how do you perceive your enemy or your non-friendly countries like Russia and China to look after their interest respectively in this region, and then you developed your response. So the President-elect Mr. Trump has actually dictated his response against those perceived threats in this region. So again,
would you like to respond to those particular perception of threat, as you already mentioned, which have been mentioned by Professor MEIROWITZ about China, about that particular route
Yes.
through the Panama Canal?
so the similar, the same litmus test is applied on the Panama Canal also. That again, as of today, as my worthy colleague mentioned, more than 70% the usage is by United
US.
States, and around 20% is by Chinese. So it will take a considerable time and effort that this balance or this ratio
Shifts
would be-
either way, the
either
other way around.
So just to again, this is a political statement, and it would yield them some space to show. Actually, you have to read this, with the other statements regarding conflicts and wars in general in the world, and the President-elect has been, always during election campaign has been talking against the Biden administration or Obama administration, that they have been engaged the world over in conflicts and wars. But by giving such statements, he is countering his own anti-war rhetoric as well, that while a new administration will be against wars, but it's not going to be a toothless American administration. So wherever necessary, we will look after our interest with whatever
Is
might.
it a huge shift within just span of a couple of weeks? This is a very important point that you've just highlighted.
But it has been,
It's countering
while
his
you are
own
yourself there and covering this election campaign, he was trying to be champion, and he was trying to be, contesting for the votes of the Muslim population. And then all of a sudden, there was a change, and he, as you have mentioned about Gaza, that the hell is going to break, unfold on the people who matter, if in case the captives are not, released. So is it not a contradiction to his initial stance while he was contesting around for the votes?
But how is it going to such type of statements, even if they are considered to be rhetoric as per the analysis, isn't it going to have an adverse impact on the relationship with those countries which are being mentioned by President-elect?
Definitely. Definitely.
Or are they going to succumb to the pressure, the so-called pressure that is being
This
built
could
up
be,
this
it can
particular
be
moment?
termed, in international relation parlance, it could be a coercing means that, he wants Canada to be a good compliant neighbor. He wants, Denmark to accede to whatever leverage they want to have in the island, and so is the control of Panama Canal. So this is, beyond a political statement. It could be a coercion by, word of mouth.
Right. Mr. KIANI, do you have anything to respond to the earlier perception of threats which has been mentioned by Professor Mark MEIROWITZ?
Yes, I have. Well, I do not agree. Unfortunately, I'm a diplomacy practitioner. A professor is known academic, I agree. But these new imperialistic, positions are not acceptable. Meaning, if Mr. Trudeau was not a good prime minister, you can't go and say, I'll make it the 51st state. The people of Canada will decide and bring in a new prime minister. They will have the elections in the party and others. This is normal, very, very normal. In United Kingdom, the last now 5-6 years, there have been 3 prime ministers. If one prime minister fails, the next country cannot say, I'm going to occupy that. That doesn't happen. These are imperialistic policies. It doesn't work. Regarding China occupying Panama Canal or something, Chinese policy in the last few decades you have seen, yes, it has a rise in economic power, but it has never used force to decide issues. For example, use of Panama Canal, everybody uses it. Issues of tariff that can be negotiated, that is not the case. But you cannot have, you say that China is threatening. I doubt very much China threatens anything. It is economic power. It's doing what it is. Regarding Greenland, meaning I do not understand as to why the United States feels threatened that it has to occupy Greenland to make it more secure. Yes, It is a waterway. The strategic importance is there. It is for everybody. But it has to look into what the people of Denmark are saying, what the people of Greenland are saying, and the elected government of Denmark. You cannot just ignore it and say that, no, I want to do this. My opinion is, sir, on the day when President Trump on the first day sits there, his priority, I tell you, on the table would be domestic issues like health, education, the pension reforms and others. The people will demand that they elected them not to get hold of Canada or Greenland or Panama to improve their lives. Then would be ending the war in Ukraine and ending the war in Gaza. These and how to deal with China. You know, as they say, significance of coexistence. They have to coexist. This is a world in which United States and Canada are the two major powers. And these occupying this thing, imperialistic policies do not work, and they are not going to work, and they will receive no support.
Well, Mr. Kiani, I get your point, very comprehensively elaborated. I have to move on to another point that he has talked in the presser. Professor MEIROWITZ, I'll take your opinion first regarding that. When we have seen after that particular victory in November elections, President-elect has talked about the situation in Gaza, reiterating in this particular presser his earlier stance that all hell is going to break out if the captives held in Gaza are not released by the time he takes office on 20th of January. What do we understand of this particular statement? What sort of a hell is going to unleash as far as Gaza is concerned? We have seen hell already being unleashed since 7th of October 2023, where innocent Gazans, over 45,800 have perished because of that Israeli bombardment, disproportionate and relentless, continues unabated.
From the United States perspective in the North American continent, we are very worried about Canada. We're entitled to. They are our closest, longest border and ally. They are our greatest friends. And frankly, the President of the United States, just like the British Prime Minister and the British Parliament, all criticize each other. Canadian Parliament, absolutely. But the problem with Canada is that it was going down the tubes with Trudeau because of migration and because of his incompetence. And the Canadian people don't like him. They like Paul Edouard. They like him better, or maybe Freeland. And it's absolutely the right of American presidents to criticize. I don't understand this idea that, gee whiz, Americans can't criticize Canadians. The British criticize us day and night. Watch the Parliament, watch the Prime Minister's questions. So my point being, on all of these, is Canada going to be a 51st state? No, it's not. Of course not. Is the United States going to go and buy Greenland? Well, I don't know. Maybe there'll be another agreement or something will be done. Is the United States going to grab Panama? I mean, it's unlikely. We also have a Congress in this country, which is our legal body, and we have a Supreme Court. And no, we're not going to be doing that. What is important, and I think we have missed the point, where Trump is a change maker. He put these points forward, and just listen how we're talking about this. When's the last time on PTV you had a discussion on Greenland? When's the last time you had a discussion on Panama? No.
Professor MEIROWITZ, what about the situation in Gaza? How the world is going to manifest a new hell breaking out over there when an all-out hell has already been broken out since 7th of October?
I understand that, but the hostages are still being kept. And that is inexcusable from the point of view of whatever you want to debate the whole thing in 1 minute. I'm not going to do that, but the hostages need to be returned. And that's what Trump is saying. And all diplomats and all around the world are all saying in all UN resolutions, hostages must be returned. He says, you got to return the hostages. All hell will break loose. What does that mean, sir? I'm not going to tell you what it means. And the point being, notice the fact that when Trump comes in and he makes a statement about something, people listen. And about the 5% in NATO, the United States bolsters Europe. Who's supplying, helping Ukraine? Who is going to defend Ukraine, Poland, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia? Who is going to defend them? Who? Poland? Poland? Germany? Germany's whole politics is faltering. It's the United States.
Professor MEIROWITZ, I seek your pardon for the interjection over here. I tried to manage the time as best as I could among all the participants. Let me quickly go towards Dr. Malik. Dr. Malik, regarding the situation in Gaza, how the world would manifest the all hell breaking out if the captives are not released?
I think he is just following his policy of ceasefire. I mean, what he was doing during his electoral campaign. If you want to bring a powerful actor on a table, firstly you need to show that, okay, you are doing for other side. Like the hostage, it means they are just trying to, if they release, Hamas is releasing these hostages like this, then there is no reason that Israel will reject to start a negotiation with the Hamas. Or even this can be used as a to pressurize the Israel that you need to have a ceasefire and for the sake of these innocent Palestinian people are like this. It's not that it is completely threatening to this only that Hamas like this, but I think this strategy is just only bring Israel on a table to start the negotiation or at least practically do something on a ceasefire.
Is this threat to bring Israel to the negotiation table?
It's basically just like trying to compel the Israel to start a negotiation with Israel. At least we have some terms and condition for a ceasefire like this.
Right.
Because if you have not, for example, from this statement, it is clearly indicating that it's not like that completely he is trying to convince the Israel that without any terms and condition you start a negotiation with Hamas. So on one side he is basically threatening the Hamas that you need to think about that, otherwise you will pay for its price. If Hamas is basically,
as per your understanding, there is an implicit threat or a pressure on Israeli Prime Minister also to go towards making a deal.
exactly, I think so.
Marshal
Because
Malik,
I
what's your
would
understanding?
agree with him with due respect. I think this is a clear message to Hamas that they should, as a confidence building measure to come on negotiation table, they should release as a prerequisite, they should release the hostages, and then only then America can intervene to get a solution to this problem.
Right, Mr. KIANI, your understanding regarding this last particular point, what do you understand of this hell breaking out, all hell breaking out?
President Trump is serious about it, I can tell you very frankly. And my opinion is that before the 20th comes, this issue would be resolved. I can tell you. The pressure would be both on the Gaza and on the Israeli Prime Minister to come to terms and release the hostages, as the professor is saying. I think before 20th, this Gaza will be silent, I can tell you. And the issue of first, the two that are interconnected, the release of the hostages and a ceasefire in Gaza. They're interconnected, and I think before the 20th, the issue will be resolved. This I can give you, I cannot say guarantee, but I think as the A.G. Wells would say, shape of things to come. So I think that will be done.
Former Ambassador joining us on Skype. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Professor Dr. Mark MEIROWITZ, Professor at the State University of New York Maritime College Affairs, Senior Political Analyst. Thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. In the studio, we were joined by Dr. BAQIR Malik, Foreign Affairs expert. Dr. Malik, thank you very much for your time. Also, Mr. Air Vice Marshal Retired IJAZ Malik, Senior Analyst. Mr. IJAZ Malik, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.